Hello, Michelle. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good.
Is it going to be just us two tonight? Yeah. How's everybody?
Good. Can you hear me, Bill?
Yes, I can hear you.
Hi,
Bill.
Michelle.
Hi, Linda.
Hi.
Hi,
Gary?
Michelle.
Gary, can you hear us?
He must be muted. There he is. Gary?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. We just want to make sure you could hear us.
Yeah, it took a little for it to load. I'm not sure why, but not everybody.
Okay, we'll give couple more minutes and then we'll get started. John's not going to be able to join us tonight.
All right. That council meeting was definitely the quickest I think I've ever experienced in my life.
Listen, I was trying to figure out who was mad. We just
I
ran
know,
through
when
the
there was-
agenda.
When there's nothing on the agenda other than the bills, it goes pretty fast.
That was quick. I was like, oh, okay.
They're usually not that fast.
We hadn't, if Vernon hadn't brought up about shoveling sidewalks, it would have been.
That's
5
true.
minutes less, so.
Would have been quicker.
Yeah,
I think everybody's greeting to each other would have been the longest part of it had the sidewalks not been brought up.
that's true.
There's been a few of them like that over.
Well,
if
I
there's-
bet you after you release the budget, they won't be that short again for the rest of the year.
Yeah, the beginning of the year is kind of quiet.
Oh. For which?
Go check and see if the
No.
Boners are still winning.
No, pound sign. Pound sign, pound sign. Right.
Bill, just to let you know, Boners are winning.
Yeah, I was following it there. It looks like they were up by 14. I don't know, what are they up by now?
Cutting a little closer. Last that I'm trying to peek at the TV, but it's in a commercial. Last I seen it was 8.
Okay, it's right now it's 51, about 45. So they're up by 6 with 7:32 to go.
And we gotta talk about what's important around here, and that would be them Bonnies.
So we love our Bonnies. So
Right. I'm so mad. See, we should be there.
yes, you're right. So, well, I was going to sign in, run this from home tonight, but I couldn't get the laptop to sign into my Wi-Fi at home, so I had to run back up here. So
Huh.
don't
I know every now and then here on Main Street, we'll be on the computer and a spectrum just drops, and then we
Had
have
issues.
to.
We had issues
Yeah.
at school today.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
Okay, because I know Mike's had to reboot it a couple times,
Mhm.
and it happens, maybe once or twice a month, and then you
Well,
see the spectrum drop.
Yeah, our
Yeah.
phones were on the Wi-Fi, but I couldn't get the city laptop to sign in, so I'm back here.
I was working from home today, and there was a time in the morning that everything shut off. So I'm assuming
Wow.
Spectrum went down for Wi-Fi. I mean, everything shut off.
Interesting.
Hi, Chris.
Danny, if you turn your TV a little bit more this way, I think I can see it.
I keep seeing around the corner.
No, you don't.
Okay.
I purposely set up in this corner tonight so I could catch the end of the game.
Uh,
You know,
Hey,
That's the beauty of doing these things at home. You can strategically place yourself to do multiple things at one time.
Yeah,
Oh, it is. I've had people get up and go to the kitchen, get a snack, come back. With our one meeting, we've had people do that, go let the dog out, come back. So it's the beauty of Zoom. So it's 6:30, so let's get started. I'd like to welcome everybody. And before we go into discussion, what I wanted to do is just mention, now that we're going to be starting the budget process, and Alderman Crawford brought this up to me the other day, that maybe we would want to, instead of having our meeting in 2 weeks, hold off and have it on March 24th, which would be a month. So that way, if we get tied up in the budget, because we're looking at Tuesday and Wednesday, and hopefully, we'll just move along. We won't have to worry about it. But would that be okay with everybody if we did that? Because we were originally supposed to be once a month, and we started out every 2 weeks. So if we could do that, and then after that, the budget should be done, and then we can go back to the 2 weeks if you'd like. How's everyone feel about that?
Sounds good to me.
Yeah.
I mean, that makes sense. I mean, because if you have to roll into that Wednesday for the budget, that makes sense.
Okay, so I'm going to put it down for March 24th, our next meeting.
Do you think, would it make sense? Are there any strategic initiatives that we should be proposing in this budget process?
Well, and Bill could probably address this better. I do believe, looking through some of the notes, Bill, was there something about a part-time HR person?
yes.
Okay, and I did see that. So that's one of the things coming out of this committee. Was there anything else off the top of my head? The only other thing that I could think of would be the website.
We did talk about upgrading and possibly looking at a different developer as far as the website's concerned.
Yeah, so those would be the two things. And but I know the HR, part-time HR is in there.
Yes. Yeah, that's under the mayor's budget. That'll be under.
Yep.
Them are the only two things that I think that we talked about in this committee as far as recommendations back to the council. Part-time, and then the website, new website.
Okay, so why don't we start out by, I can catch you up on the presentation that we had from Civics Plus. There was a young woman that came and she gave us a presentation about our website, how the company that she works for works with multiple municipalities. They've been doing it, correct me if I'm wrong, Bill, but did she say 10 years or 20?
I believe 10 plus years, that's probably safe to say.
Okay, so it's not just a startup company, but she, one of my questions was about diversity. And she said that they would focus on more pictures showing diversity. She would want to do more with our calendar to really, highlight diversity events in our community. Those were two of her suggestions. Another one that someone made to me since that presentation was, for instance, this is Black History Month. And we, and this person is a neighbor, it wasn't from that meeting, but she said, wouldn't it be nice to have a story about one of our local people that has done a lot for our community, like the African American Center, and have her picture, and I'm talking about Della, because she's been doing this, and have her picture and a little story about her before the end of the month to highlight, Black History Month. What do you guys think about that?
I think that would be smart. That the city should highlight aspects of Black History Month from a city perspective and from a local perspective. I think that's something we should do.
We probably should have been doing that once a week all month long.
Yeah,
We should have.
Yeah, no, definitely. In reference to the website and the presentation, did we only consider one vendor? In reference,
That was the one.
because that doesn't seem fiscally responsible to only consider one vendor, honestly.
Oh, yeah, no, we just started. So
Okay.
we're open to more.
Okay,
We, John invited her because she's done a lot of others around here. So that's where we thought our starting point would be.
fair enough. Okay, I was just
I
curious.
know, yep. And I know, Michelle, you had an individual that was interested in doing something with our website. If you want to just expand a little bit about her.
Well, I did, but she watched the council meeting and that presentation, and she doesn't feel like what she does is going to be able to support what we want. So, which I thought we were going to have the presentations for us as the diversity committee and then present to the council. But so now my lead is no longer like interested, unless we could have her like come present to us, and if we could figure out what it is that we want to have on the website and let it and see if she can accommodate that for us.
Right.
That would be the only way we could probably get her to come back. So
Yep.
I don't
Now,
know.
the girl from Civics Plus, she did an overall view of our website, different areas that she thought needed updated. A lot of what we have, but it just needs, kind of spruced up. She agreed that there should be more visual, updated visual pictures and things on the website. I told you what she said about the diversity. So I think I don't have a problem having, and John invited her to the council meeting. So I don't know if he just didn't think to have her come to us. She may come back.
Well, no, I just thought that maybe what I'm saying is I thought maybe we should have done that first and
Yeah.
decided between whoever we had present what we were looking for. So,
Right.
so now that she's watched that, she's saying that she doesn't feel she can accommodate our city website. But I told her I wasn't sure what we were actually looking for. So if for some reason that changes and we can determine all the features that we want,
Right.
maybe she'll come and present to us. But then I don't know, did you guys get the demo and watch the demo?
I did.
With the pictures and
Yeah.
Yep. And I see what you're saying. So why don't we see if we're going to have anybody else come? John was kind of heading this, and I don't know, Mayor, if he said anything to you about having more vendors coming.
Yes, he did. He said he's got another one lined up to come and give a presentation.
See, and I think we're to that point right now where it already went to the common council for a presentation. Should it have came here first? Probably, but it
Mhm.
didn't, right? So now you're to the point where you can't backtrack, because this is meeting number 3 and talking about this. And really where we should be at right now is once it's presented to the common council, it only comes back here when they look at what we want on the website, right? But
Right.
them vendors should have came here first, did presentations, and maybe we could have made our top 2 recommendations to the common council, and then they could have came back and did a
Yeah,
recommendation.
that's what I said. Yeah.
That's kind of like how we wanted to see that flow, but it didn't, and I don't see how you can backtrack out of that now.
Well, I was just thinking if that strategic planning committee meeting is on a YouTube, can you go back and look at it? Is that saved, Bill?
Yes,
I watched the presentation.
yeah,
I did too.
yeah.
Okay.
They're on, those meetings should be on our website on YouTube.
But do you understand what I'm saying about not being able to go back and backtrack? Because you've already set the precedent now. You already set the wheels in motion. They're already set. And to say to that vendor who had to represent in front of the common council, now to come back and say to the other vendors, well, you don't have to do that, then that's really, are you really leveling the playing field? I mean, let's just face it. Let's just say that we didn't have the process that we wanted to have, but it's at the common council now.
Mhm.
I don't want to sound contrarian, but I also wonder how much should we as a committee be be evaluating website developers, right? Like, I think we can give guidance and like what we want, especially from like a DEI perspective. But
Mhm.
I don't think we were chosen to renovate a website.
Right.
Yeah,
And-
and I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that because this was initially a thought that we had coming from the committee that we should sit and meet and say, okay, we want to see X, Y, and Z on the website. So let's have presentations from vendors, pick our, 2 or 3 of them, and then send them to the council, and then we're done with it. So.
Right.
Yeah, I just think there was a miscommunication. It's not flowing.
Yep.
Is all I think that happened personally.
At this point, I think this committee's done with the website until they come back to us and say, this is what we want on it. From a diversity standpoint, what do you guys think? I think we've done our due diligence when it comes, that sits with the common council now.
Mhm.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but eventually it'd have to go through an RFP process, wouldn't it?
Right.
Depends on the cost.
Okay.
Right. It has to be over a certain amount.
Okay.
Mhm. And if it's deemed a professional service, then you don't have to do an RFP. So we did have to get that determination from the city attorney. But just if you want, I did have a conversation with the mayor of Glen Falls. He's a friend of mine. And they're the ones that were one of the examples in that presentation.
Mhm.
And they're very pleased with the product that they have there, and it fits all their needs. And I think for me, one of the key points was the notification. There's a module in there about people can sign up for different notifications from the city, and that was I think that was one of a very good feature to have. For a lot of different things. Let's just take a snow emergency. You could bank and put a message out right away. So anything, from what they said there, you could isolate it to different areas too.
Mhm.
So if you had a house fire, let's say, God forbid we have any more, but if you did, you could, put out a message for people to stay away from that area, things like that. So, but
Right.
he's very, he actually put me on with his deputy mayor who oversees that end of the website and all that stuff. So, and he gave me a lot of good information there, and they're very pleased with it. One of the things that stood out, he said it, they have a dedicated person to it. And I said, you mean you have a person working 40 hours a week, 8 hours a day, 5 days a week just on the website? He says, no, we have a person in our clerk's office that works on it probably 2 hours a day to make sure it's updated. So it's not a big, we have to dedicate one full-time job just to take care of it once it's all set up. So that was nice to hear that also. So,
Mhm.
so
That's good.
there's a brief report on that.
Yeah, I think the example she used, I think Paul Gonzalez brought it up. If the water had to be shut off for some reason in a particular neighborhood, they could get notified if they were on the notification list. So she did a pretty good, presentation. And I think she pointed out some of the things we're doing right, and some of the things, like I said, just need updated. And I did like, as we started out, the diversity, her ideas, but I do think, we still have some time left. And I think it would be nice to have something on there for Black History Month about an individual. And I bring up Della because I saw the article in the paper the other day about the center. And she's a pretty well-known person in town. So, she'd be a good person to do a write-up and have a picture and, put it on our website so people can read about it.
Bill, you should put that on your agenda. Things to get done next year during February. You should do one a week.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And have people send us in, send them their ideas. And then we have enough to pick from, that we're not at the last minute, trying to get one. So I just thought that was a great idea that this individual gave me. And I'm sorry that it came so late in the month. It would have been nice to do it all month long. So moving on. And as I said, I will talk to John about the next presentation and see if, it might be possible to have that individual come to us, or you guys could, zoom in on that particular council meeting in that committee and just let us know, ahead of time if you have questions, or after the presentation, what you thought. Because I'm always going to ask, what we're going to be doing for diversity and how to be more inclusive in the community on our website. So that's a question that, will be raised. Okay. Okay, the next thing on my list to review tonight, Michelle sent us all out from Niagara National Grid, I'm sorry, the reverse mentoring program. Did everybody have a chance to look at that? John successfully sent it to everybody.
Yeah. I read over some of it.
Okay.
I apologize. I saw it, I briefed on it, but I did not have a chance to really get into it, so.
Yep. No, it was interesting. I'm going to hand this off to Michelle because she brought it forward. And Michelle, if you'd just like to highlight some of the things that you would like to highlight in it. I read through it, and I think a lot of it is more than possible to do. And it's just interesting, some of the points that they make.
So I'm going to be honest. I haven't looked at it since I had it sent out, because that was a couple weeks ago, and life is happening over here and with school and stuff. Right. But I just kind of sent it out just to see if it was like something that we could implement in with what we're trying to do, and just to see what everybody's thoughts were on it. Like, go ahead, Gary.
No, I personally think that the concept behind it is fantastic. It's coming up in different companies that I've worked in. We've always referenced this concept. They just gave it a new name. It's always been managing up or managing the manager. Essentially, they just call it reverse mentoring, so the manager doesn't get all in their feelings, is all it is. But basically, the concept is managing the manager. And most supervisors, it's a way to hold the supervisor accountable, but it's also a way for the supervisor to understand and learn what it is that the employee is going through as well, and being able to understand that they can learn that concept. In the military, we had to essentially learn the person or the soldier, the officer's job above us, as well as make sure we knew the guy's job below us, so we could do both as well as teach both. And this program, I think, it had a lot of good points in it, a lot of good aspects behind that. And I think that adding that into kind of what we do as a city and developing, like we talk about those ride-alongs as far as like the police department's concerned, or doing side-by-side shadowing, internship programs, that type of thing. I think it can highlight a lot of different aspects and really engage us with the city. If we kind of with these points that are in here, I thought it was a good program personally. I think the concept of managing up and that reverse mentorship, as they title it, I think it's a very concept personally.
I liked it. One of the things that I noticed, it points out that you don't do this all the time. You take 10 to 6 months or 10 to 12 months to do it, but you do it like an hour a day or an hour a week. And it's just reaching out, and, the people that work under you, they should understand your job, because I know we ran into this at the county where someone became ill, and the next person that was in line to take that position really wasn't ready to take it. And I think you have to be to be cognizant of that, because, anything can happen, a family emergency, a death, an illness, and you need to have that next person in line ready to just step right in and be able to run that department. And I think that's something that I took away. I think prioritizing diversity, recruitment, and retention was a good point. So Did anybody else have any input on the handout?
I
Yeah.
I looked at, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. Go ahead.
No, go ahead, Chris.
I'll go. One of the things that we've looked at in more in the, like the education environment with programs like this is that like there's one concept about like succession planning and making sure that the next level is able to take on a level of responsibility. Where reverse mentorship can become, it is not, I don't want to say it's problematic, but it can become problematic where people are asked to like represent their race, represent their gender, represent their sexual orientation, and be like a full-time educator for their supervisor. Where at times, like the supervisor should be taking advantage of trainings to bring themselves like up on these topics. And so like if this type of program is implemented, it has to be implemented really carefully and really well so that like a person of color or an LGBT person isn't put in the spot of being a constant educator for their own like identity, for their own group. And that's where I just think we have to tread cautiously when something like this is rolled out so that it doesn't cross that line. Like fundamentally, I love the bones of the program, but the way that they structured reverse mentoring, it could fall into an area that would be problematic.
Okay. Dan?
I was just gonna echo what kind of Gary and Chris just said. It's like this, I mean, they've taken it, you know, and given it a new name. It's kind of in a couple of new strategies, but from what I read of it's kind of a system that's already in place. And I can tell you, like, some of the companies that I work for, the things I've done is we always say that. Thanks, Bill. We always say like,
I couldn't stand it. I'm sorry. I had
there's
to look.
always been a standing concept with me that for 3 hours a week that the supervisors, there will be a succession program, and then the supervisors would meet with the people that were in that succession program, and they would always have a discussion about what was going on in the company and how that fit with what was going on underneath them, and you know, and so they learned from each other of things that were coming and how they fit and how they can make them work and how they can mesh. At the same time, you were building your supervisors or administrators or whatever level that was on, and at the same time, they were learning more what was going on the day-to-day stuff underneath them as well. So it was kind of a two-way street with an open conversation, and that's what I read out of that concept is kind of what I got out of it. So
Yeah,
I mean,
I've honestly, like the dangers that you're talking about, Chris. My personal experience, I haven't seen it cross that threshold. Personally, I've experienced there was a collection agency that I worked for in Florida that was very much so do what I say, regardless of what I'm doing. You do what I say, not what I do. Period. End of discussion. Know, our word is law, this, that, and the other. And they made a really a paradigm shift in the company, and they started doing this 360 evaluation, you know, where the supervisor essentially sat down and let the employee evaluate the supervisor every so many months type of concept. Generalizing it and simplifying it, but essentially that's what they did. And to me, I think that was like too loose of a way to handle it. It allowed for that crossing of the threshold that you're talking about, you know, as far as the danger zone. But when they shifted more into that managing up and that reverse mentorship, it did kind of become that two-way street that Danny's talking about, and more of that everyday conversation. How is the company addressing different things that are just issues for the employees, as opposed to teaching them about, you know, my gender, my gender roles, my, you know, ethnicity, what's happening as a person of color. It was just, how's the company's sensitivity with these types of issues in general, as opposed to stepping into that role. But, you know, I can definitely see how it could become that if it's not rolled out correctly. You know, of course,
Right.
but I think there's a lot of ways to structure it to where it's effective, and it becomes based on talent and just based on how, from a city perspective and employment perspective, are we just addressing those issues of diversity and preparing people to be able to step in roles, and how are we addressing just the diversity in the workplace in general? I think there's a lot of positive there, because you can just learn from people in general. Just by
Right.
having those open conversations,
But
because we all see things differently. We all have different backgrounds. We all have different perspectives on things. And each one of us can watch a movie, and each one of us are going to give a different review, and I think the same official in from a workplace diversity perspective, and these types of programs can benefit that.
Right.
in the ultimate bottom line to any program that you roll out, in my opinion, and no matter what you're trying to do, is it boils down to the people that are implementing, right? So if your supervision isn't strong and your leaders aren't strong, it doesn't matter what programs you roll out; they're all gonna fail. If your training's not, you can train somebody up as much as you want, but if they don't have the skills to carry out what you're trying to carry out, you're just throwing good money after a bad problem. So I mean, so that's what I was saying to you, Chris. Like, really, you're right. If
It's a
the
valid
super,
concern.
if the supervision's not right at that level,
Mhm.
you very well could get that.
Definitely.
I
If you're
guess
not
my
careful.
point, like, when I clicked through the links that said, like, so let's say you're a supervisor and you want to sign up, right? You click through the links and the question asks you, I want to find more information about what it's like for LGBT people and sexual orientation. I want to find out more about race and racism, right? So I'm specifically being matched as a supervisor to learn more about these specific topics. And so it's putting my junior employees in the position of having to educate me as a supervisor, right? And so that willingness on a two-way street, I think, is important, as long as the checks and balances are in place. That doesn't make the junior employee have to be in that role 24/7.
Right.
Right.
Agreed. I don't think it should be like that same junior employee all the time for every time there's a supervisor that's requesting that level of interaction, that it's the same junior employee every time.
You get a supervisor that says, I want to learn about cupcakes, and they're always matched up with Bill. That who we picking on, the supervisor or Bill, right? Bill's teaching everybody how to make cupcakes every single time somebody wants to make cupcakes. I mean,
I thought you would have said donuts.
I wasn't.
But,
I wasn't gonna. You're the mayor now. You moved up from donuts to cupcakes. They're a little bit more expensive.
but I think it's important to also echo the fact that programs like this are meant to, we don't necessarily have to mirror it. We tailor and take things and shape them to what's effective for Olean, because Olean has its own personality. And
Right.
and so we've got to be able to, just like eating chicken. I know in my family I've got 3 younger brothers, and each one of us, if you hand us a chicken wing, you can usually tell who's the oldest and who's the youngest in the family by the way that bone looks at the end of the meal. Each one of us eat that chicken wing a little different. So I think it's important to recognize that as we look at different programs and opportunities, that we mold them based on what's effective for Olean.
Right. The thing that I was thinking is, what if you have a supervisor, and I can see this anywhere, that's just not open to being open to different ways of looking. Because if you have someone that is not willing to kind of follow through on the process, either their personality or their beliefs just don't let them go there, how do you rectify that?
Well, you have to have a conversation with them, because if the city or a company has decided to go in a direction,
Mm-hmm.
and here's the direction that they're going, at that point, it's really not up for debate. Here's the direction, right? And how do we get you on board is the conversation you have with the supervisor. That I would have is, the first conversation would be, what are your holdups and how do we get you on board? How do we, because this train's not going to stop moving because you're not on board. So how do we get you on board and how do we bring you along? And then constantly, if it's still an issue and they're not on board, the expectation is that they're on board. That's the job expectation.
Yeah.
That doesn't change. You have to figure out what you're going to do with them.
I can't, if my job, if I were a company and my job at this company is to put pickles in a pickle jar, and the company decides, you know what, we're no longer going to use jars, we're going to use plastic jars, plastic containers. And I refuse to use the plastic container because I like glass jars. And so I glass jars. Eventually, I am no longer going to be working at that company because the expectation is for me to put those pickles in the plastic container. So it doesn't matter at the end of the day what my hangups are or why I can't get on board or why I can't adjust or why I can't make the changes. When the expectation is laid out, and especially if my inability to adjust becomes a detriment to the employees or to the company, at that point, I'm no longer going to be putting pickles in any container for that particular company.
That's what I was trying to say in a nice way. You probably won't be there long. I mean, just put it out on the table.
And what's unfortunate oftentimes is to the detriment of the rest of the employees and to the detriment of the rest of the company, or in this case, to the detriment of the city and to the detriment of the rest of the population within the municipality. We make excuses for that one individual that does not want to make the adjustment and does not want to. We make those excuses because, you know, hey, our heart goes out to you. We understand you're struggling for whatever reason. We care about you. But at the end, here's the expectation. And I cannot jeopardize the treatment of the rest of this department or the rest of this municipality because you can't make the adjustment.
Yeah.
And so there comes a point where you can no longer put pickles in the container.
I think going with there, though, there also needs to be a very clear set of what those expectations are.
I agree.
When we're going back to some of like the HR policies that we looked at the beginning,
exactly.
Right, is it clear what those expectations are? Is there a clear discrimination and harassment policy? Like I know there's a clear sexual harassment policy, but is there a clear discrimination and harassment policy?
And them are things that
are a clear grievance procedure for someone who is being targeted.
Exactly.
And I think in that sense, that's where like the HR person could be very helpful.
Right.
Now we're back where we started, so I'm done.
That's what I was about to say.
And that's to the question, what do you do? That's where that handoff goes, and that HR person addresses it based on those policies. And it can't be because I know this person, because we live 3 blocks from each other, because we grew up together, because her grandmother used to bake me a pie, that now all of a sudden the policy is shifted and shaped. It can't be adjusted like that. The policy is the policy is the policy. It is what it is. We have to adhere to it. And it is what it is.
I know when I'm reading something and I have to sign off on something that somebody's doing something wrong. I'll use the nice term, they're doing something wrong, and you get that nice piece of paper on your desk and you have to read it and sign it. I make a point not even to look at the name. I read the incident, I read what happened, I read where they're at. I make my determination on whether I agree with where HR landed on that or not, and I sign it, and then I read the name. I don't even know who I'm signing for until after I've already made my determination, because, you know, it could be somebody that I've worked alongside with for a long time, and I'll be biased on that. And so, you know, but going back to Gary's point, the city itself sets them expectations for their employees every year, with every budget, with every common council meeting every year, the state of the city every year, the direction of the city every year, where they're going, where they're headed, what the expectations are. Them are the expectations of your employees. We say we're going to be more diverse. We're saying we're going to do the expectation of your employees are to follow through with them particular things, right? Based on the procedures that they have in the city. Um, and they work that out with them in HR if they have an issue with it. And HR leads them through the policies and says, here's what you have to do. You might have an issue with it, but our policy says 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 is what you have to fulfill. And if you don't think that you can fulfill that job expectation, then we gotta have a whole nother conversation.
Yeah,
Now,
because
that
keep in
conversation is
mind,
whether or not you're right for the department.
in
Yeah.
retrospect, I can't get upset if somebody has a grievance to me and they go through the proper channels and file that. I can't all of a sudden get upset and start retaliating because we're going through that, and we have those issues as well in society,
Mhm.
and so thankfully with the budget and the HR person coming on board, and like Chris was saying, is one of the things that we first talked about is taking a look at some of these policies. And yeah, we've got policies in place, but some of them are very, very vague, very broad, and being able to narrow them down. I think things like that will make a very, very big difference and make very strong statements. And there won't be lingering questions as to what do I do? How do I address it? How can I act? It'll be very cut and dry and very clear.
And nobody can say you're picking on them, or I didn't get the same treatment. Yeah, you did. Based on the
Yeah.
policy, yeah, you did.
Mm-hmm.
You just happened to mess up one more time than somebody else.
Yeah. No,
Um,
I get the point.
I asked in an email whether this committee can talk about residency requirements for the city, and I don't know where this committee falls on that. But I think it's in our wheelhouse. Um, but people can disagree with me with that, and I'm going to be perfectly fine with that. But I think it's in this committee's wheelhouse. It's something that the city has gone back and forth with for a little while. I think that we could have some good recommendations coming out of this committee about residency. And I don't know how everybody else feels about that. You guys can tell me if I'm crazy, but I think it's something that we should address.
No, Bill, you want to take that one because we deal with this,
Yeah.
because we can't recruit people locally.
Well, when I came in as mayor, I took a hard stance on residency, and I kind of got beat up on that pretty good.
Mhm.
And it's a tough, it's an issue. And right now, I'll just give you an example. Right now, we're going to be hiring some more police officers, but there is no one left on the list that live in the city of Olean.
But I have a different view on residency requirements, I guess I should say. Let me just start, and I'll give you my view on residency requirements, and you can understand kind of why I wanted to talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that a residency requirement doesn't mean that you have to live in the city when you're hired. And I've researched this a little bit through different cities, in a couple of them in different states. If I lived in North Carolina and I wanted to take a job with the city of Olean, and you guys hired me, my expectation would be that I would have to move to the city of Olean and have residency within 6 months. That's how I view a resident. That's how a pretty standard residency requirement would go, right? So I had a conversation with an HR person that I know actually in Charlotte, and asked them why their residency requirement reads within 6 months. And it's because of the same issues that we're having. They can't find enough qualified people inside the city to fill the jobs that they have. So they recruit outside, make them move inside, and it builds their population and opens up their hiring to nationwide. But yet still builds their population. Every city employee they have has to live within the city within the first 6 months of employment. Why 6 months? It makes sense because you get your first evaluation at 6 months in most jobs. So it all lines up. Your city requirements, your evaluations are all done at that 6 month period. Um, I I believe the city has an opportunity here to grow its population with its city workforce, and also diversify itself by putting a strong residency requirement in place, something like that. if we already have a problem with minority population in Olean, what makes you think that you're going to recruit a steady number of minority candidates for a job? You already have a problem. You don't have enough. So you're already pulling from a small pool instead of opening yourself up and really diversifying your city and bringing more people in, um, and actually growing your city. Um, and that's just one piece of the residency requirement that I kind of want to touch on. And like I said, you guys can tell me if I'm wrong. If we want to continue to pull from the same group of people that are here, but remember, your population is about 12,000. If you pull from about the 12 to 13,000 and you only hire from there, guess what? You're going to stay at 12 or 13,000.
So within the last year to 2 years, and this is for you, Mayor, have we hired anyone from outside the city that was asked to move in, or they moved into the city after they were hired?
We've had a few that have moved into the city after being hired, but as for it's been everything that NICOM says, everything that to require them. My understanding is that at one time that was a requirement, was to live in the city, but then the Common Council got rid of that requirement. And I'm not sure if that was under you, Linda, or under Bill Quinlan. I'm not sure who it was under.
I think it was way back under Bill, and a couple people that since then we've hired, we've encouraged them to move. I can remember way back when Mayor Griffin was mayor, we had a couple police officers that wanted to move just a short distance in the town of Olean because it was a family home. They had to come to the council to get a waiver for that. So it used to be much tighter years ago.
And by no means, don't get me wrong, and by no means am I ever advocating to upset somebody's family life the way that it currently is. If you're a current city employee and you don't live in the city, you wouldn't fall under these requirements. You took that job without the agreement that would be currently in place. We can't ask you to uproot your family and move them all to the city within 6 months or a year, right? That doesn't make common sense. You're already established where you're at. I'm talking about for new employees coming in.
Right.
And we talk about a city requirement as if I'm saying to you, if you don't live in the city of Olean right now, we can't hire you. That's not what we're saying. What we're saying is, I don't care where you live now, but within 6 months, you must have an address in the city. I don't care where you live now. Doesn't matter. You can live in Mexico or Alaska, but within 6 months, you have to be here with a residence.
Yeah.
I have a little different, to me, residency has the component that Daniel's talking about, but for me, the biggest issue with residency is property maintenance. Like I have a real issue with somebody that lives in California that has trash property in Olean, New York. That drives me crazy. That's my thing. But on having a requirement that someone live here, I think that that's going to pose limitations for us trying to expand from a diversity standpoint. Because a lot of families now are having to have, one spouse work in, New York and travel, and the other spouse, has to, is working in California, for example's sake, and not being able to find housing here, a home that they're satisfied with, that meets their needs. So I think from a diversity standpoint and to be inclusive, we have to broaden our horizons, because otherwise we stay in our little Olean group, and that's our problem. If I can, I pay taxes here, so I can say that. But our problem is that we're keeping it all in the family, and we have to look at the options that the new contemporary society is, the new rules of the game that folks are living by. So maybe have residency requirements, maybe not 6 months, maybe something broader than that, if that's the way we feel we should go. But anyway, that's my story, and I'm always going to stick to it.
And Charlene, I thought a lot about the property thing because, I have an issue with people not taking care of their property too. But we have a lot of abandoned buildings, a lot of abandoned houses. I call them abandoned houses. Some people live in them. I call them abandoned. But a lot of ran down houses. And to try to get people to move into the city from outside of here, and if they buy these homes and they fix them up to move their family into them, doesn't that make for a better Olean though? Doesn't that make for a better place overall? It is my thought. If somebody's coming in to take a job, they're probably going to buy a home. Given the current property of the homes, they're probably going to have to fix one up. Doesn't that benefit everybody in the long run? If somebody buys a $30,000 house next to me, completely redoes it, now all of a sudden it becomes a $90,000 house. Doesn't that help me?
Well, my thinking though is that, and I'll just use my own house as the example. When I bought the house, it's an old house, and so the previous owners had lived in it, had it for 50 years, and they did a lot of upgrades and stuff. But I had to spend $30,000 just on the visual aspects. Like, there was this wallpaper that it made me dizzy. It had so many flowers on it. So just, those kinds of things cosmetically, but just the outside. We don't have a community in which, if we were hiring someone and wanting their family to move here, our community does not look like someplace you want to go live. I'm sorry to say, I was born and raised here, so I can say that. We have a lot of work to do. And I think part of our recruiting and our equity and our inclusion, we've got a big job ahead of us, and I'm not sure that we really understand how big that job is. But I do believe to get people to come here and want to be here and be part of it, we do have to work on our aesthetics and the residency requirement. I don't know. Personally, I think that could bite us. But like I say, I'm just saying.
Well, it could, and you have to look at it from both sides. So I'm glad we're having this conversation. But here's my thought is, if Olean continually invest in people who don't invest in Olean will never get better. The aesthetics will never get better. The population will never get better. We'll be fighting the same battle because people will be coming here, taking the jobs and taking their money to Cuba and taking their money to Allegheny and taking their money to Ellicottville. And at the end of the day, who suffers? Olean suffers, right? Because people come here during the day, they work, and then they leave. That doesn't benefit Olean. If you brought 500 jobs into Olean right now and nobody lived in Olean who worked them jobs, Olean wouldn't be any better off than it was before you brought them jobs.
There's ultimately other ways to bring money into Olean as well, because I'm gonna be honest with you, I don't care if I buy a house for 10 grand. I don't want to spend another 20, 30 grand into it to make it livable, to make it what I want to be. That's not what I want to do with my home, especially if all I'm making is somewhere between 40 and 70,000 a year. That's not what I want to do with my money, in all honesty. And there's multiple ways that we can look at bringing money. Everywhere I've ever lived, and you've lived some in similar places to where I have, downtowns are always popping.
Yep.
Downtowns are always a revenue generator for those cities. And there were things that used to happen here in the city. So there's, I think to Charlene's point, maybe the 6-month window is a little tight, as far as the residency is concerned, maybe, looking at that. There's a lot of different aspects and a lot of different ways to look at it. There's multiple sides to the coin.
I just always hear people complain about property, but never want to bring people to the city.
Yeah.
We also have to have something to attract people to come to the city.
Right.
Yeah.
And I'm with Charlene as far as taking care of your property, because we have one next door to us, and garbage sat outside that property from October until May. And then I called the proper channels. And then when an officer came down, a code enforcement officer came down, I was outside with the owner of that. And he was like all snarky, made a comment about, oh, some lady called. And I was like, yeah, that's me, because I take pride in my property. And this trash has been sitting here for 6 months. So when you bring, and I just recently had lunch with, she's the Dean of Business at St. Bonaventure. She lives in Allegheny.
Yeah.
Because she couldn't find the property that she wanted in Olean. Plus, she was kind of deterred by other things. Her kids go to Olean, but
I know
if we want people coming from cities, we want it to be
think about that for
presentable.
a second, Michelle.
I'm sorry?
Think about that for a minute. This lady that came from Florida felt more comfortable in Allegheny, New York.
No, that's where she found what she was looking for, and she wasn't deterred by the garbage from other properties. That's what I'm saying. She much would have rather been, because she didn't choose Allegheny School for her kids because it wasn't diverse enough.
But how do we get these properties fixed?
Yeah, and can I just say something? Within
We
the
need to hold
last 4
landlords
years,
accountable.
well, and I think that's an issue too. But what I'd like to say is, over the last couple years, and Bill can attest to this, we've taken down, between private property owners, the city, and the county land bank, close to 50 houses. So we have started addressing the blight.
But
On the other,
another example I'm going to give, we lived in the town of Olean. Our kids left, we downsized, we bought this house. Great neighborhood, like I walk to work. So I have the house next to us, then I've got the house behind us. They're both rental properties. One was owned by the father, the other one's owned by the son. The tenant that's out there now has been nothing but trouble since we moved in. Like, he plays his music. He was just doing it right before the meeting. I wish he would do it while I'm in the meeting, so everybody can understand what we mean by we have to turn our TV up when we're trying to listen to the TV, because his music is rattling our windows, and like, the property needs to be cleaned up. We tried to contact the landlord to be that friendly neighbor, but get no response. So I feel like we need to at some point hold the landlords accountable too, along with getting rid of those properties that, are abandoned and need to come down. We need to have our landlords take pride in their property, just like they would their own personal home. And I just don't think, because I was a landlord once, and it was the worst thing ever. I'll never do it again, because I took pride in my house, and then I was renting it to someone. And then when I would go there and see what they were doing, it just was like hurtful, because we take pride in everything we do. Even my house that we just sold on Rock City, like, when I see some of the stuff that the kids doing to the house, it's like, it's not mine anymore. But again, like, I just would just take pride in their properties. And then, so once we clean up the city that way and get people to come in, when they're coming in for the tours, or when, like, John Dwalby is taking people around and showing them places and showing them Bonnas and showing them all the stuff that we have something more to see than just people's garbage on their
Right.
porch or
And we
a
do
sidewalk
have,
pride.
taken care of.
Olean's
Yeah.
definitely got to be desirable. We have to have something
Right.
to offer not just businesses to bring businesses in, but something to offer people and families. And, what is it that we have to offer? Not just, okay, we've got the schools and we've got the college and, we've got this and that, but what do we have for your kids to do when they get out of school? What do we have for them to do on the weekends? What do we have
Right.
for them to do,
It,
And
those
maybe,
types of things. We
maybe
have to be
6
able to
months,
highlight
maybe
those.
it does need to be longer than 6 months so they can come here and live and then decide if they really want to stay. Like, we have to get them to stay. That's
Right.
the hard part.
well,
Right.
Let me just interject something here, please.
go ahead, please, Bill.
We have been working very diligently over the past 10 years
Yep.
to make Olean more attractive and more desirable, not only to businesses, but to residents. Everything we're doing on walkable Olean, the trails, whatever
And I'm not putting that down.
everything we're doing in our parks, we've the council has been very active in putting together new laws to deal with the blight, the inspections now that take place, and so, you guys are acting like we're not doing anything.
No, Bill, I'm not saying that. And as far as the inspections go, people were in and out of that apartment next door to me. Nobody was coming in and inspecting when people were leaving. I called and I was like, okay, somebody's leaving. You need to come inspect. The stairs were all broken. The doors were hanging off. And when they did that, they fixed it up, but there's still a lot of work to do.
Yes,
I'm not
it is.
saying that
Yes.
by any means our city isn't cleaning up. That's not it at all. We have a lot of work to do. And we do have laws in place, but sometimes when I have to call like 6 times before somebody comes down. I shouldn't have to do that. And I shouldn't have to listen to the music.
But
And even though there's the noise ordinance, it's still an issue with getting that taken care of.
well, maybe this conversation went somewhere that I didn't necessarily mean it to go. I'm not trying to talk about landlords. That's a whole nother issue
But we have landlords that aren't taking care of their properties.
But
making it unattractive.
What I was trying to say was
saying that we have to make Olean more desirable doesn't negate the fact that there's been progress over the last 10 years.
Right.
And to take offense at the fact that we're addressing that we need to continue to make progress or we haven't made enough progress is a problem. I'm sorry. I'm going to say it.
Thank you.
That's a problem. Nobody has said Olean's not making progress.
I wouldn't still be here if I felt that way.
Things aren't being done. The whole purpose of this committee is to address things to move forward. And if every time we address and tackle hard issues, there's an offense or there's an issue or but wait, we're doing this, then we're not going to be able to progress.
Thank you, Dr. Harvey.
There's no.
And then I'll just, I agree.
Because nobody's negating that Olean has not made progress, but I can tell you that this is not the Olean as far as the excitement, the energy, and the beauty that the Olean was when I grew up. That is not the Olean of today.
And you're making my point for me. Yeah. Because here's what I wanted to say. Here's what I was trying to say. Olean has made progress, a lot of progress. We need to make more progress. We can't continue to make progress if people continue to leave. Who are you progressing? Pretty soon you're going to be progressing 8,000 people instead of 11, 12, 13,000 people. I went back and I did all the numbers. Olean's population decline is equal to Olean High's graduation rate on average every year.
And we get that, but what I'm saying.
Hold on. But what I'm saying is, if other cities have residency requirements, Olean doesn't have everything it needs to keep people here. Fully understandable. Olean's residences aren't all up to par. Fully understandable. Olean's landlords are a problem. Fully understandable. No undisputable facts. But if we're talking about bringing people to the city and making the city more diverse, how is a city paying the bill can you allow your employees to not participate in that? To not have that not be an expectation of them to participate in that. I wish Bob was here.
So I guess,
I wish Bob was here because Bob's got a really good take on this from somebody who's moved out of here, came back, and really truly understands that your city tax dollars are leaving the city at 5 o'clock every day. Bill, how many people do we have that work for the city that don't live in the city? Do we know that?
No, I don't know offhand.
I
you
would
can say that
I'm
for teachers too
assuming
and
a
the school
lot.
taxes.
I'm
You know how many
assuming
teachers
I'm
we have that
assuming
don't
a
live
lot.
in Olean and don't pay our school taxes? Like,
So-
but I guess what we should be focusing on is, before we even talk about residency, it's a great idea, but first we need to figure out what we're going to do to be able to draw people here to have them establish residency. Because I'm saying that if we were to hire somebody tomorrow and they're coming from North Carolina and they have to determine, like, purchase a home within their 6 months of living here, after 6 months or whatever the
You don't
policy
even have
is.
to purchase
We
them,
have to
let them rent.
have something that's they can say, oh yeah, we're definitely coming here. Our kids can do this. We can do this. They got this going on the weekend. Like, that's what we should focus on first. And then we can put the residency thing in there as well. But
meanwhile, we're gonna hire these officers that we're getting ready to hire. And we're gonna hire all the rest of the people that we're gonna hire this year. And they're not gonna fall underneath this plan. So if you just hired 5 new people this year, that's 5 potential people that no longer live in the city.
we can
Who's
hire
taking
those 5 people and they're going to come here and they're still going to leave because we don't have the life that they might have somewhere else.
I said at the beginning of this conversation, you can agree with me or disagree with me. It doesn't, I'm going to sleep the same at night. So
am I.
It doesn't matter to me.
Yeah,
So-
I'm done. What's next?
So,
Yeah,
like,
that's okay. And I think with the residency thing, I think that could be a very long discussion. And Bill, you and I have both been in the same position, and it goes either way. You know, we've had people that don't want to live in the city. We've had people that have come to the city. Just down the street from me, we had 3 houses go up for sale. They were snatched up within a week. And they were 3 young couples that work in the city. 2 of them lived in Portville. They moved here. The other one, I think they were further away than that, but they moved here because they wanted to be closer to their jobs. And the 3 homes they bought were good sized homes, but the people that lived there had passed away. And so I can see where we lose people and then we replace those very same people, so those numbers don't change. So these 3 young couples that I've met and that work here in the city, they love living here. They love being close to their work. They love being close to their families. 2 of them lived further away and moved back. So some of that is happening, but I totally understand where Dan's coming from. And Michelle, I understand where you're coming from, totally. You know, it's the same thing. The teachers don't want to live here. And then when they retire, they move to Florida. So we still lose those tax dollars. So it's kind of this, you know, that little hamster that keeps running on that circle all the time. Sometimes that's how it feels when you're trying to get people to move here and to stay. So I think that's a great conversation. But I think we do have to look at some type of residency thing. Maybe 6 months is too short. I don't know. But I also see that it's after 7:30.
Yeah.
And we try to keep this to an hour. So what do you want us do you want me to talk to John and see for our next meeting, which would be March 24th, if we can have either the vendor come for the website, or do you want to move on to something else?
I think we should probably move on to something else. I don't think the website is really at this point, unless we're given input once the vendor's chosen. I don't think we really need to belabor the website anymore. Personally,
Okay.
That's my personal feeling.
Okay.
I think we're
Now-
done. I think it's at the common council. We're done until
Okay.
it's time to build it. We're done.
Okay, so what policies or what issues or what direction do you want to go for our next meeting? So we can be looking into things, or, you know, looking at the way other communities do things. What would you like to move on to next?
I would say residency requirements, but I'm not going to touch that one again for a minute. I'm going to leave that one alone for about 3 meetings, and then I'll bring it up again.
Well,
That's okay.
personally, I think we need to have some kind of outline at something to guide and structure us, because, you know, this felt very thrown together.
Well, there
So
were two
it's-
things we were covering tonight, and then we got off on the residency. So I apologize for that.
Well,
Shirley.
I just feel like we need more of a structured outline so that we can, you know, work on this and then either determine that we've concluded it or we're not going to finish it, or, I mean, we did actually get the website thing resolved, I guess. But yeah, I just personally would like, you know, some more structure, like, so I can
So I just reopened the mission and vision and pillars of focus that we wrote early on. And going back to like to Charlene's point about like what.
Chris, I can't hear you.
Oh, I'm sorry. Is this better?
Yeah, thank you.
So to your point about like our structure and our strategic work moving forward, like we identified 4 pillars of focus when we wrote our mission. And it was human resources, training and hiring practices. The second was community outreach and dialogue, which I think in part the website falls under that community outreach pillar. Youth interaction and youth development. And then the last one was initiatives to remove barriers and foster a diverse environment. And so I wonder if we need to return to those 4 pillars and say, well, what else are we going to be tackling? Like what else falls in those pillars that we should be focusing on next? Or do we need to revise the pillars?
No, I think you're right, Chris. I think we need another meeting to refocus and say, what are we going to work on?
That sounds good. So why don't we plan on going back through the notes or re-watching the videos, because I do think they're saved on YouTube, and just go back to the mission statement. Also, and I don't know if you have a copy of it, but I think we also need to look at the resolution that the council passed. You know, so we're sticking to what that resolution also stated. So what I'll do is I'll get a copy of that in case you don't have it, and I'll send that out to you. So we can reevaluate the mission statement, the 4 pillars, and what that resolution stated. Does that sound doable for the next meeting?
Yeah, Linda, can you kind of organize that and send it to us? I know you're not our
Sure.
secretary, but it's all over the map for me, so it would just
no,
be
I
helpful.
have no problem doing that.
Thank you.
Okay, so let's see, it's almost 20 to 8. So we will be getting back together on March 24th. And everybody's okay with that?
Ma'am?
I just want to make a clarification, if I may.
Yep.
Okay. I wasn't upset with anyone because, you know, you're saying what Olean needs. What was bothering me was that, and you clarified it, that I haven't heard anybody saying, you know, that what we've done so far is in the right direction.
Mhm.
And so I got that clarification, Gary, and what you said there, and I'm not upset. I mean, we want constructive criticism. But we
Understood.
also like to, we also have been working very hard over the last 10 years, to move Olean forward.
Understood. And I can appreciate that. Definitely.
Okay. So, okay, guys. So I'll let you go and we will get back together on the 24th and I will send out an outline to go for next meeting. And if you have any input in the meantime, you can email it to myself or to Bill and we'll include that also. Okay?
Fantastic. Y'all have a wonderful night.
Have a
You
good
too.
one. Go
Take
Bonnet.
care, everyone.
Bye.